I overheard my dad tell my brother, "Your sister? She doesn't deserve a dime. She's out." I was in the hallway, frozen, one step from entering the room. Mom didn't even flinch. She just smiled like her plan had finally worked. That tight-lipped, satisfied smirk that said checkmate. And that's when I knew. It wasn't just Dad. She was in on it too. I didn't cry. I walked straight past my old bedroom, packed up my laptop, and moved every dollar I had to an account they didn't know existed. But what they didn't know was, I knew about the second trust. The one Grandma left. The one they tried to hide. And it had just matured. I'm Jenna Cross. And if you think you can handle what happens next, don't blink. Have you ever caught your family plotting your erasure while using your mother's voice to do it? They'd been laying the groundwork for months. Subtle at first. Mom accidentally left me out of family photos. Dad kept saying I was too emotional for business matters. My brother, Chase, stopped returning my texts unless he needed something. I kept showing up anyway, smiling at dinners, offering to help with the estate paperwork after Grandma died. I thought it was just grief, but it was greed. And I heard it, clear as day, through the cracked door of Dad's office. "Don't tell her about the account," he said. "We'll say it was closed. Split it between us. Jenna's out. She's been a burden long enough." A burden? The girl who wiped Grandma's mouth in hospice. Who paid the bills when Chase gambled away his trust fund. Who gave up her job to help Dad through his surgery. A burden. That night, I opened the hidden drawer in Grandma's dresser, the one she told me about before she passed. Inside was a flash drive, a letter, and something else. A signed amendment. Sealed. Notarized. Leaving everything to me. They wanted me out? Fine. I'd let them throw the match. And then I'd burn their entire plan to ash. The letter from Grandma was short. Just 4 lines written in her unmistakable cursive. "Jenna, blood doesn't make them worthy. If you're reading this, they've already turned on you. Take what's yours and don't look back." I stared at her words until the ink blurred. Not from tears. From rage. Because she knew. She saw it coming. And she left me the weapon, her voice. Her proof. Her last chess move. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen like nothing had changed. Dad sat at the head of the table, flipping through financial papers. Chase scrolled his phone. Mom made tea, humming like a woman who thought she'd won. "Morning," I said flatly. Dad didn't look up. "We're busy, Jenna. Can you give us a moment?" I smiled, cool and practiced. "Sure. Just wanted to say congrats." He finally looked up. "On what?" "On handing me everything." Mom paused. Her hand jerked. The tea spilled. "What are you talking about?" she asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out the amended will. Laid it flat on the table. Chase looked up. Dad stood. Mom went pale. "That's not," she started. "Not real." I said. "Signed. Notarized. Witnessed. You remember Beverly, Grandma's old friend?" She co-signed. "Dated 2 weeks before she passed. Guess she didn't trust the rest of you." "You stole that," Dad growled. "No," I said. "I earned it." The room was silent. "You thought I'd just go quietly," I continued. "Let you cut me out while smiling through Thanksgiving. But you underestimated me." Dad stepped forward. "You listened to me." "No," I snapped. "You listen. The account you try to hide? Already frozen. I had the bank investigated the moment I heard your little speech last night." Chase finally spoke. "What the hell is happening?" "Your inheritance," I said, "just slipped through your fingers." Mom's lip trembled. "This is your family." "No," I said. "This is a lesson." And then I walked out. Not running. Not hiding. Just reclaiming the ground they never thought I'd stand on. The next move wasn't mine. It was the lawyers. And by sundown, they'd all receive letters. Official. Irrevocable. Explosive. By noon the next day, they had all received the letters. Certified. Stamped. Undeniable. Dad called first. 4 missed calls in a row. Then Chase. Then Mom. I let them ring. I wasn't giving them the dignity of panic. Not this time. Instead, I went to the law office Grandma had always used, the one with the dusty green awning and brass door handles. Her lawyer, Mr. Hallberg, greeted me with a slow smile. "I've been expecting you," he said, sliding a file across the desk. "Your grandmother planned every detail, down to the last cent." I opened the folder. The amended will wasn't just about the money. It gave me control of the family estate, 2 rental properties, a locked investment account worth just over $1.2 million, and the power of attorney over Dad's own trust, originally set to pass through Chase. I blinked. She really gave me everything. "She trusted you," he said, "and she didn't trust them." The next call came from Chase's girlfriend, Ivy, the one who always looked at me like I was a coffee stain on her designer blouse. "Jenna, this is insane," she hissed. "He's devastated. Can't you work something out?" I stared out the office window, watching the fall leaves scrape across the sidewalk. "Tell Chase," I said calmly, "that he should have treated Grandma like a human being, not a bank account." Then I hung up. By that evening, they showed up at my door. All 3 of them. Dad in his old blazer. Mom clutching her purse like it was a weapon. Chase in sunglasses, even though it was dusk. Classic. I opened the door and waited. Said nothing. "We need to talk," Dad said. "You had decades," I replied. "Now you can listen." Mom stepped forward. "Jenna, this isn't what your grandmother wanted." "Oh." I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Grandma's voice. "If they try to twist this, you show them this tape. I trust you, Jenna. Only you." Their faces crumbled. And I smiled. Because now they knew. They hadn't just lost control. They'd lost the one person who never wanted any of it, until they forced her to take everything. They stood on my porch like ghosts from a past I no longer belonged to. Dad, with his pride leaking from the corners of his eyes. Mom, trying to piece together the cracks in her mask. Chase, pretending he wasn't unraveling inside his designer jacket. "Jenna, we're your family," Mom pleaded. "Then you shouldn't have treated me like the enemy," I said. Dad stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "You don't understand what you're doing. That trust was supposed to be for the family's future, not just yours." I laughed, once bitterly. Interesting. Because when you thought I was cut out, that future didn't seem to include me. Chase finally snapped. "You're really going to ruin us over some money? You want revenge that badly?" I stepped closer. "This isn't about revenge. It's about memory. About all the times I kept my mouth shut while you lied. About the nights I cleaned up your messes, paid your debts, and got called ungrateful for not smiling through it." Their faces tightened. Because I wasn't yelling. I was finished. "The will is airtight," I said calmly. "The assets are locked. You can't contest it without going public. And I don't think Chase wants his little Vegas business trip getting subpoenaed. Or the LLC under Dad's name that's been funneling money out of the estate since last June." Dad paled. "You." "I did my homework," I said. "While you were writing me out of your story." Mom's voice cracked. "We were trying to protect the legacy." "No," I said. "You were protecting your control. And Grandma saw through it. They didn't deny it. Because they couldn't." "You've made your point," Dad finally said, flat and hollow. "No," I replied. "Grandma made it. I'm just carrying it out." I turned to go back inside. "You don't get to shut us out," Chase called after me. I turned one last time. "You shut me out first," I said. "Now I'm just locking the door behind me." And I did. Turn the key. Close the chapter. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because it was time to clean the rot out of everything they touched. The family name. The business. The legacy. By Monday morning, I was sitting at the head of a mahogany boardroom table. Dad's table. Or at least it used to be. The family business was part of the trust. Grandma made sure of that. 51% now sat in my hands. Legally. Irrevocably. Dad's partners looked confused when I walked in. Chase was already seated, arms folded, eyes burning. "You don't belong here," he muttered. I slid the paperwork across the table. "According to this?" I belong exactly here. The partners read in silence. Then one of them, Thomas, I think, cleared his throat. We weren't aware of this change in leadership. I met his gaze. You are now. Dad burst in 10 minutes late, breathing hard. He froze when he saw me at the head of the table. This is a hostile takeover, he snapped. No, I said. This is a correction. He marched to the table, slapped his hand down hard. You don't have the experience. I have the authority, I said. And starting today, every transaction over $10,000 goes through me. Chase stood, red in the face. You think you're gonna run this place better than Dad? I looked at him coldly. Considering you used company funds to pay off your poker debts, yeah. I think I've got a decent shot. Gasps. One of the board members started whispering. Another pulled out his phone. Dad sank into a chair like the air had been pulled from his lungs. This isn't just about power, I said. It's about transparency. Something this company hasn't seen since Grandma stepped down. Thomas nodded slowly. She always said you were the one who asked the real questions. I gave a tight smile. She taught me well. After the meeting, Dad followed me into the hallway. You're really doing this? He asked. You already did, I said. When you decided I was disposable. He looked tired, broken. You'll regret this. I paused. No, Dad. I regretted trusting you. This is the cure. That afternoon, I began the audit. Every hidden account, every shell company, every dime misused. I wasn't just taking control. I was exposing the empire they built on lies. The audit reports came back faster than expected and uglier than I'd hoped. Tens of thousands funneled through consulting fees that led to Chase's personal Venmo, offshore transfers labeled as equipment rental, and a six-figure account titled Golden Sun Ventures that linked directly to Mom's name. They weren't just trying to cut me out. They were bleeding the company dry. I sat at my desk late that night, fingers cold on the keyboard, scrolling through pages of financial rot disguised as strategy. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was premeditated theft. I sent everything to the legal team with a simple subject line. Proceed. The next morning, Chase showed up at the office, uninvited, unshaved, and looking like the walls were closing in. You're going to ruin our lives, he spat. I stood. Calm. You did that yourselves. I'm just holding up the mirror. You think this makes you some hero? You're destroying your own family. I stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Family doesn't build empires on lies. Family doesn't erase you and call it loyalty. And family doesn't smile while telling your brother to cut you out. His face drained of color. Yeah, I said. I heard that conversation. Every word. He tried to deflect, to spin it, but I cut him off. You forged Grandma's signature on a withdrawal. That's a felony. I gave you a chance to walk away clean. You stayed. Now you deal with the fallout. You don't have to do this, he whispered, voice breaking. I don't have to, Chase. I want to. He left without another word. Later that day, my attorney called. We're ready to file criminal charges. Do you want to press forward? I paused, looking out the window at the company sign. Once a symbol of pride, now a monument to their deceit. Yes, I said. No settlements. No silence. We do it by the book. I want the truth in ink. By sunset, the company website had a new leadership tab. My name, my photo, my mission. Underneath, a quote from Grandma. If you can't trust the foundation, tear it out and start again. And I was doing just that. The subpoenas were served on a Thursday, one each to Mom, Dad, and Chase. Witnesses said Dad turned pale. Chase cursed so loudly the process server flinched, and Mom? She didn't even blink. She just tore it open, read the first line, and smiled like she'd been expecting it. That scared me more than anything. The court date was set. I would testify. They would answer. But before that, Mom requested a meeting. She texted. 1 hour. No lawyers. You owe me that much. I didn't know her a thing, but I said yes. We met at the old garden behind Grandma's church, The one Mom used to pretend to tend while sneaking calls with the estate planner. She wore white. Too clean. Too calm. "I have to hand it to you," she said, sitting on the weathered bench. "I underestimated you. I didn't sit. I wasn't trying to impress you." "No," she said. "You were trying to destroy me." I stepped closer. "I wasn't trying. You did that to yourself." She looked out toward the chapel. "I kept this family running. I made sure your father didn't lose everything after his third failed investment. I patched the holes. I handled Chase. And you." She turned to me. "You were always the wild card." I folded my arms. I was the only one not lying. She stood slowly. "You're going to win. We both know that. But what happens after you do? You think you'll feel peace? You think Grandma would have wanted the circus?" I smiled, small, sad. "No." "But she would have wanted the truth. And she'd be proud that I finally stopped apologizing for existing." For a flicker of a moment, her mask cracked. Then she stepped forward and whispered, "Everything crumbles, Jenna. Even the truth, eventually. Just wait." I turned and walked away before she could twist it into another warning. That night, I couldn't sleep. But not from fear. From readiness. Because I wasn't just exposing the past anymore. I was building the future. One courtroom. One truth. One final blow at a time. And they had no idea. The final nail was already in place. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, just the air. Tense. Unforgiving. Like it knew truth was about to walk in and lay waste to decades of silence. Mom, Dad, and Chase sat together. 3 faces. 3 masks. 3 ghosts of the family I used to believe in. I took the stand. Swore my name under oath. And then I began. I told them everything. The forged withdrawal slips. The hidden LLCs. The offshore accounts. The voicemail Grandma left me 2 days before she died. Voice thin but clear. "If they try to shut you out, you don't let them. You are this family's future. Not their version of it, yours." The judge listened. The courtroom listened. And they said nothing. When it was Mom's turn to speak, she tried the same performance I'd grown up watching. The sighs, the soft voice, the subtle shift of blame. "We were protecting her from herself," she said. "She's sensitive." I laughed out loud in front of everyone. "Is that what you call erasing someone now? Sensitivity?" The judge didn't flinch. Dad kept quiet. Chase looked at the floor. By the end of the testimony, it wasn't even about money anymore. It was about dignity, restoration, closure. And when the gavel fell, it was over. The ruling? Full control of the estate remained with me. Chase was ordered to pay restitution for unauthorized use of company funds. My parents? Permanently removed from any financial or fiduciary role within the business or trust. Public. Final. Loud. Outside, reporters swarmed. I walked through them like they weren't there. Back at the lake house, I opened Grandma's old journal to a page I'd marked months ago. She'd written, "Sometimes blood must be drained for a body to heal. Families are no different." That night, I stood on the porch, looking out at the water. They had tried to bury me, and in doing so, handed me the shovel. But I didn't dig a grave. I built a foundation. Now, the house bears my name. The business wears my values. And I sleep with my windows open, unafraid. Because when they tried to cut me out, they didn't realize I was the root. "Your kids will never be as successful as your brothers," Dad laughed, pouring himself another drink. Mom chimed in without missing a beat. "Some people are just born to fall short." They said it like it was a joke. Like my entire existence, my sacrifices, my silence, was a punchline over pasta. My son had just gotten his first job. My daughter was applying to grad school. But none of that mattered. Not to them. I stood up. Calm. Steady. I didn't raise my voice. "Then tell your golden boy to pay all the bills," I said. "Because I'm not sending money anymore." The room went quiet. Forks froze midair. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hesitate. Mom's eyes narrowed. "What money?" she asked slowly. "We never got a cent from you." She said it like she believed it. Like the automatic transfers I'd been sending for 7 years never happened. As if the $800 for their leaking roof, the $3,200 for Dad's hospital bills, the monthly $500 for emergencies that were always suspiciously vague, had all been figments of my imagination. I didn't argue, didn't pull out the receipts. Not yet. Because this wasn't about truth. It was about power. They thought they could rewrite history, that my silence made me small. But they forgot who set up their online banking, who managed their taxes, who held the passwords. My name is Maren Clark, I'm 35. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when the quiet daughter pulls the plug? Not out of anger, but out of exhausted clarity. They wanted loyalty. They demanded sacrifice. But they gave none. And I finally stopped bleeding for people who can't even admit I was their lifeline. They didn't follow me out of the dining room. No one did. Not even my brother, who sat at the end of the table, smirking like the crown prince of nothing. I drove home without music. The silence was louder than grief. At midnight, I opened my laptop, logged into their shared bank account, the one I managed. I stared at the scheduled payments. Mortgage support, $1,200 per month. Utility coverage, $410 per month. A prescription plan auto refill, $289 per month. All from my account, all masked under family love. I canceled everyone.
Click, click, click. Done.
And then I pulled up the email drafts I'd never sent. The ones titled, "For when they say, I did nothing." Each one had an attachment. Invoices I'd paid. Transcripts I'd funded. Appliances I replaced. A 7-year trail of quiet giving. I forwarded them all to myself. No one else. Not yet. By morning, my phone had 10 missed calls. All from Mom. All ignored. But her voicemail? That I saved. "Maren, sweetheart, I think there's been some mix-up. We'd never compare you. You know how your father jokes. Anyway, the water got shut off this morning. Did you forget the bill?" I didn't reply. Instead, I sent her a spreadsheet. Color-coded. Line by line. Total at the bottom. $62,450.83. No message. No subject line. Just numbers.
Cold. Quiet. Real.
5 minutes later, she texted. "You really kept track?" I did. Because love, without acknowledgement, becomes labor. And labor, without respect, becomes debt. And I was done paying theirs. By the weekend, the family group chat had turned into a circus. My brother, always the first to play diplomat when his comfort was at stake, finally chimed in. "Not sure what's going on with Maren, but we should keep family issues private." Private? Like the time Mom accidentally forwarded my divorce papers to the entire group? Or when Dad announced at Thanksgiving that I'd always been too sensitive to succeed? Now, they wanted privacy? I didn't reply there either.
But I saw the shift.
My cousin stopped sending memes. The chat went silent. And then came the call from my father. I picked up this time. Because some silences need to be broken to be heard. "Your mother's not well," he said sharply.
"She's stressed."
"You've embarrassed her." "I didn't embarrass her," I replied, calm as glass. "She did that when she pretended I never helped her." He exhaled heavily, like talking to me was an inconvenience. "I just don't understand why you're keeping track. Families don't keep score." That line, that perfect, polished line. "I only kept score," I said, "because you kept denying I ever played."
Click.
He hung up. No apology. No reflection. Just the familiar sound of disconnect, literal and emotional. I stared at my ceiling for an hour after that, then opened a new document on my laptop, titled it, "When Love Has Receipts." And I started writing. Not just numbers, but memories. Moments. Every time I shrunk myself to make room for them. Because this time, I wouldn't let the story be rewritten. They wanted a scapegoat. I was becoming a scribe. Monday morning, I got an unexpected knock. It was my aunt, Dad's sister. Always neutral, always absent. The type who says, "Let me know if you need anything," and then disappears for 6 years. She stepped inside like she owned the space, her arms crossed, mouth already tight with judgment. "I just want to understand what's happening," she said. "Your parents are heartbroken. Your mom says you've cut them off, that you're keeping score." There it was again. That phrase. Used like a weapon. "I didn't start keeping score," I said quietly. "I just stopped pretending it was a game." I handed her the printed spreadsheet, watched her eyes scan down the rows. The medical bills, the rent payments, the groceries, the repairs, the birthday gifts my parents claimed came from them, but were always funded by me. She said nothing, just handed it back like it was radioactive. "You know your brother's struggling," she whispered. "As the son, he has responsibilities. You have to understand that." "I do," I replied. "That's why I covered his law school loans when he flunked out and never told anyone." Her face went pale. I watched her recalibrate, then retreat. She left without saying goodbye. Didn't even close the door properly. I stood there for a long time after she left, half expecting someone else to show up.
To guilt me. To twist it around.
But no one did. Not that day. I wasn't the villain. I just stopped playing the unpaid hero. And I could feel the balance shifting. Not just in numbers, but in narrative. They had stolen my silence. I was reclaiming my voice. By Thursday, I got the letter. Not an email. Not a text. A letter. On thick cream paper. Folded once. Placed in an envelope with no return address. But I recognized Mom's cursive immediately. It read, "Marin, we don't understand what you're trying to prove. We did our best. We gave you everything we could. If we made mistakes, it was out of love. Stop dragging the past into the light. It's unkind. It's humiliating. Let this go.
Be better than this, Mom."
There it was. No apology. No ownership. Just emotional sleight of hand. A magician's trick where the guilt disappears into my lap. I folded the letter and placed it next to the receipts. Another artifact in the museum of things they wanted me to forget. That evening, I logged into my personal blog, the one I never shared, where I wrote late at night when the silence felt too loud. And I published a post titled, "When You're the Family Wallet." I changed names, masked dates, but the story, it was mine, and it was true. By midnight, it had 4,000 reads. By morning, 12,000. Hundreds of comments. Strangers saying, "Same. Thank you." I thought it was just me. I didn't write it to expose them. I wrote it so I wouldn't keep erasing me. Because silence had cost me too much already.
Time.
Health.
Dignity.
This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. They wanted me invisible. Now the world was reading. And I wasn't shrinking anymore. The blog post went viral by the end of the week. Not just shares, traction. A popular online magazine reposted it under the headline, "The Hidden Cost of Being the Good Child, One Daughter's Wake-Up Call." The comments poured in. Thousands. People telling their stories. Siblings who were always the fallback plan. Children turned piggy banks. Daughters called selfish for setting boundaries. And somewhere in that wave of voices, I stopped feeling alone. Then came the message I didn't expect. From my old high school English teacher. "Marin, I recognized your writing. I always knew you had a voice. Thank you for using it." I cried in my car for 12 straight minutes. Because it had been years since anyone saw me as something other than useful. The next morning I got a new email. Subject: Family response, drafted by Andrew. My brother. The golden one. The one they always said had potential, even when he couldn't hold a job for more than 3 months. I opened it, scanned past the long-winded defense of our parents, the passive-aggressive tone, the faux concern. But one line stuck out. "If you really cared about this family, you wouldn't air our dirty laundry. You'd stay quiet like you always have." That line, the quiet like you always have. It wasn't just a suggestion. It was an expectation. A demand. And for the first time I realized they never loved my voice. They only loved my silence. So, I hit delete.
And then,
I hit record. A podcast. My story. Our reality. Unfiltered. Because if they didn't want the world to hear it, they should have treated me better while it was still a secret. The podcast launched on a Wednesday. Episode 1. Inheritance without a will. The unpaid roles daughters inherit. No names. No revenge. Just truth. Layered. Measured.
come.
I didn't scream. Didn't accuse. I simply told my story. How love turned into expectation. How responsibility became exploitation. And how silence was the price of being the good one. Within a week, I had 18,000 listeners. Messages flooded in. You're telling my story. I thought I was crazy. I didn't know we were allowed to stop. And then, Mom found it. She didn't call. She didn't write. She posted on Facebook. A long, emotionally laced post about children who forget where they came from. A smiling photo of her and my brother, captioned, "Some of us still know what real family means." It got likes,
Comments.
sympathy, but it didn't sting.
Not like it used to.
Because I had already grieved the mother I thought I had. This version, performative, passive-aggressive, curated for applause, wasn't mine to mourn. I responded the only way I knew how. Episode 2. When parents rewrite the past and expect you to narrate the lie. I played one of her voicemails. Soft-spoken. Manipulative. The one where she said, "Don't tell your father, but we need the mortgage again this month. Just until things get better." I paused. Let the silence breathe. Then said, "If that's love, it should never feel like debt." They wanted to silence me. Instead, they gave me a microphone. And I wasn't afraid anymore. Because when you stop begging for love, you make space for dignity. And dignity speaks louder than history. 6 weeks later, I received a letter. A real one this time, no lawyer, no signature for my brother. Just Mom's handwriting.
Shaky.
Careful. Almost human. Marin. Asterisk, we didn't realize how much we asked of you until you stopped giving. We were wrong to pretend your help never existed. We were wrong to laugh at your kids. We didn't know how to say thank you, so we acted like you owed us. Asterisk. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know we see it now. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. Not perfect. Not complete. But honest. I folded it and placed it in the same box as the receipts. The old bills. The hospital statements. That box wasn't a vault of anger anymore. It was a reminder. I didn't imagine it. I wasn't crazy. And I survived it. The podcast kept growing. I changed the title to Break the Pattern. Because that's what this really was. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just breaking a cycle loud enough for the next daughter to hear. At my daughter's graduation, I held her hand while she looked at her acceptance letter for a PhD program. She whispered, "I want to pay for this myself, Mom. You've done enough." And for the first time in my life, I didn't cry from being emptied. I cried from being seen. Because healing didn't come from making them hurt. It came from finally knowing I didn't have to.